Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on a 10-2 webinar all about imposter syndrome. I'm Deborah O'Sullivan. Some of you might know me from previous webinars. I'm the MD at 10-2, and we're delighted to be joined by Sema Rubins from Ruby Sky Coaching. Welcome, Sema.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
So in case you don't know about 10-2, 10-2 is a recruitment agency, and we specialise in flexible and part-time recruitment for professionals. So this actual topic comes up quite a lot when we are talking to candidates day in, day out. And of course, Sema has got loads of experience of identifying and using her expertise to help overcome imposter syndrome. So we're going to learn lots about this tonight. Just in terms of housekeeping, we've got a really lovely handbook that's going to come out after the event tomorrow, so you don't need to scribble madly, and the recording of this will be available in a day or two, so that will also be sent out to you. You'll see there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I hope it's at the bottom of your screen, and I'll keep an eye out for questions and comments as we go through the evening. As I said, there's a lot of people on tonight, so if we don't get around to all of your questions, then we'll follow up with something separately after the event. So we've got half an hour plus 10 minutes for questions, so I'm not going to waffle on anymore. Let's hand over to Sema.
Hello, everybody. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this short webinar on overcoming imposter syndrome and finding confidence when looking for work. As Deborah said, don't worry about taking notes or anything. We're going to be sending you a little short handout after the session. So, who am I? My name is Sema Rubins, as Deborah said, and I'm currently a transformational life and career coach. I work with all ages and at any stage of life. I'm married with 2 daughters, aged 22 and 24, and as you can see, 2 dogs. I wasn't always a life coach, and I've had a really squiggly career. I started off with a degree in French and then went into marketing, and that was my main career before I had children. I spent a long time trying to decide what it was I wanted to do, because I knew that I didn't want to just stay at home with my daughters. I dabbled in many areas, but landed on designing and making jewellery. It started as a hobby and then became a business for 5 years. And it showed me that I had quite a creative side. So I went back to university and did another degree in visual merchandising. This led me to set up my own events and exhibitions company. And I organised events and designed exhibition stands for many years. I then went in-house with a client and worked with them for around 4 years. And I realised there that I was becoming more of an assistant than a consultant. So I left with the aim of doing something more meaningful. I started volunteering for the witness service, supporting witnesses who come to give evidence in court. And it was there that I realised that I loved talking to people and supporting them through what is a really hard time. And I decided to train as a life coach. I do surprise myself that I'm a life coach, as it wasn't something that I'd ever considered doing before. So, am I an imposter? We're talking about imposter syndrome today, and this is the first time that I've ever run any form of webinar. So do I have imposter syndrome? Sure. Well, I've made hundreds of presentations in my career in person, especially when I worked in marketing, but I've never done anything like this before. And one of my fears is that you might have switched on the webinar, got bored, and just left it running in the background while you do other stuff. Another fear is that technology is going to fail me. If at any time I literally freeze on the screen, please don't leave. I will be back. I can't see you, so I can't gauge your reactions and what you're all thinking. But I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to keep you interested. But do I have imposter syndrome? Yes, a little. But I'm taking my own advice and just doing it. So you might be thinking, what makes me an expert in imposter syndrome? Well, I'm not, as who really is an expert in it, but I have retrained and changed career 3 or maybe even more times. This has given me feelings of imposter syndrome each time as I've had to start again from the beginning. And I have felt a bit lost each time I started afresh. My thoughts have been, should I train some more to give me some more clout, make me feel more of an expert? Should I wait a bit longer before I launch my business until I feel I'm completely ready? But I've always decided not to wait, but to just get on and do it. What's the worst that can happen? So today's session plan is really quite simple. I'm going to talk a bit about what's imposter syndrome, give you some examples, talk about how it might show up in your life, how you can overcome these feelings, and then I'm going to give you 14 practical tips to take away. I mean, there are many more, but we have a short space of time here, and then we're going to conclude and maybe have some questions if we have time. So what is imposter syndrome? The word syndrome makes us think it's a medical condition. Is it? So I'm not a psychologist and have never trained in psychology, but imposter syndrome was identified first by psychologists in 1978, and this is the definition that is normally used. They defined it as a psychological condition that is characterized by persistent doubt concerning one's abilities or accomplishments, accompanied by the fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite evidence of one's ongoing success. The researchers actually surveyed over 100 women. All of the participants have been formally recognized for their professional excellence by colleagues. And despite consistent external validation these women received, they lacked internal acknowledgement of their accomplishments. And when asked about their success, some participants attributed it to luck, while some believed that people had overestimated their capabilities. They discovered that the women in the study experienced symptoms of generalized anxiety, lack of self-confidence, depression, and frustration related to the inability to meet self-imposed standards of achievement. It was also later included to include men, as obviously it can apply to them too. But if you put it more simply than that very long definition, you just don't believe your success. You will be found out to be a fraud. So what are the three main features of imposter syndrome? The main one is believing that others think you are more talented or skilled or intelligent than you actually are. Somehow you believe that they know you better than you know yourself. The next feature is that you're frightened that you will be found out and labeled a fraud. People will think you have no right to be where you are or doing what you do. And the third one is that you have a tendency to attribute your success to luck or feel that it was just because this particular time you worked really hard. But next time it might not work out for you and you will fall flat and fail. But you need to remember that most people feel it at some time during their lives. They just don't talk about it. So I thought it might be nice if we could think of some times when you have felt that you're an imposter and have found it really hard to shake this feeling. Maybe note it down in the chat box if you'd like to, and we can see what comes up for you. So I don't know, Deborah, if you can.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I've just been promoted and had a team meeting for the first time, definitely feeling like an imposter. I'm applying for jobs similar to what I used to do 3 years ago before having children, but I don't feel qualified anymore.
Very normal, yeah.
I've got a new job. I'm in tears a lot. Okay. When I became a mum, I recently joined a networking group and everyone was really confident and I just felt really embarrassed because I'd only been doing it for a short time. So there's just a few. Thank you. That's very honest of you. And actually someone's just said all the time, I always don't feel qualified even though I'm doing the job.
Yeah, you see this, everybody has these feelings. So the next slide that I'm going to show you after this has got a lot of statements on it, and I'm going to read through them slowly. But have a think while I'm reading about whether any of the statements on the slide resonate with you. So, why would anyone choose me instead of someone more qualified? Everyone thinks I'm fabulous, but every day I still worry that I'm going to be found out. I've been out of work for so long, I just don't think I know what I'm doing anymore. You know, I'm not sure if I really want to work. I feel stuck in my job and I don't think it works for me anymore. I need to do more training before I apply for the job. I'm frightened to make a change. It's easier to stay as I am. I have forgotten how to sell myself. I doubt my abilities now, even though I used to be successful. Anyone can do what I do. I don't deserve the job, as I know it was only given to me out of pity or because the employer knew my friend or my parent or my relative. My friends and family don't think I'm capable of this job. So just some of those might have resonated with you. So I thought it also might be helpful to share a few examples of clients that I've worked with who have had a type of imposter syndrome and sort of what we've sort of discovered while working together and how we've worked on them. Obviously, I've changed all their names. So here we have Sally. She is a 44-year-old woman. She recently moved abroad and she set herself up as an English teacher. She wasn't doing that back in the UK. She now works in a school and I think as a language assistant and gives private English lessons to some of her pupils. But her real aim is to build up an online teaching business for professional adults. But she's constantly doing more training, more language training, more marketing training, instead of actually marketing herself. And when she does get inquiries, and she got a few while we were working together, she would always find a reason not to take the work. It was either not enough money, not the right time, and we sort of realized what it was. She was just really scared of being exposed, and so she just procrastinated all the time. And then we have Jenny, who is a 33-year-old woman. Jenny works for charity as her day job, but she's was just telling me about this wonderful art exhibition that she's put together. It's in a public space, people come to see it, and they bought and commissioned some pieces from her. But when we talked about it, she said she would never call herself an artist, and she doesn't feel she deserves that title. I mean, clearly she has an exhibition, so what's this all about? It's fear of being judged and being exposed. And then we have Kelly, a 36-year-old woman. She had a great career before she had children. She was really well paid, but was very, very overworked and stressed. The children are now starting school and she wants to go back to working and she wants to build a new career. She decided to start her own business. Her research then panicked her, as it showed her that so many people were doing the thing that she was thinking of doing. And she's like, why would anyone choose me? And of course, what was that all about? Well, it's fear of failure and rejection. So she felt stuck where she was. But as we said before, men can suffer from it too, and often have even higher anxiety attached to this imposter syndrome. So here we have Brian, a 62-year-old man. He's the CEO of a medium-sized company with over, I think it was about 30 staff working for him. He came from very humble roots, and he was the eldest of 7 children of a working class parents. His aim in life was to make money so he could escape and never go back. And he has been a workaholic all his life. And despite having huge success, he cannot shake the constant need to work and earn. He still doesn't feel that he deserves his success. How did he, a poor boy from Ireland, achieve so much? Surely one day his luck is going to run out. Being a workaholic is a protective mechanism. He's constantly waiting to be found out. So he wants to be prepared for that moment. So let's talk briefly about the symptoms of imposter syndrome. How do you know you have it? Have you ever felt plagued by feelings of self-doubt, not believing yourself and feeling that you are not up to the job, a potential job that you're applying for or the job that you're currently in? Or have you ever felt that everyone around you is much better than you? That when you leave the room, they're all talking about you, or the worst case scenario, they're making fun of you? Are you scared that people will eventually realize that you're not worthy of this job, that at the end of the meeting, they will say, we made a mistake promoting you to this position, you need to go back to your old job? Or have you ever felt paralyzed by fear that you just can't move forward? It's so much easier to stay where you are than to attempt change. And finally, have you ever felt that you simply just can't do it? And what were people thinking of trusting you with the job in hand? There were so many other people better qualified to do it. As we said, this is completely normal. Many people feel this way, and sometimes you know what, this is a good thing. Having a touch of imposter syndrome gives you humility and relatability. It takes away some potential arrogance maybe, and makes you more vulnerable. And this is an attractive characteristic. We talk about being true to oneself, and although it is important to show confidence and inspire confidence in others, a bit of vulnerability can show people that you are human and have feelings and emotions, and that you're just like them. A great example of this honesty and humility is someone most of us know. This is quite good timing as it was the final yesterday. Nadia Hussain, winner of the Great British Bake Off in 2015. When she won Bake Off, Nadia was so shocked that she made this amazing speech from the heart. She's explained in interviews since that as a female immigrant who'd been told all her life that her parents had been devastated when she was born as she wasn't a boy. And she had been a big disappointment to them. She didn't feel she deserved to achieve anything in her life. And this speech wasn't planned, she said. The words just tumbled out. I'm never going to put boundaries on myself ever again. I'm never going to say I can't do it. I'm never going to say maybe. I'm never going to say I don't think I can. I can, and I will. How inspirational is she? We all need to learn from her. Clearly, we can't all win Bake Off, but we can all dream and just jump in and try. The biggest risk is procrastination, not failure. If you don't try something, you'll never know if it could have worked. So how does imposter syndrome show up in your life? Maybe you have high expectations of yourself. You're a perfectionist. Things have to be perfect, or you don't do them. You put things off. I'll just do one more training course and then I'll be ready. This is pure procrastination. You always feel like you don't know what you're doing, even though you've done it before. You fear being judged, and this can be crippling. Sometimes because of this, you compare yourself to others, even though their life or their work is not comparable to yours, and you suffer from comparison anxiety. How can you start to overcome those feelings? The first step is to think about what caused you to have those feelings in the first place. Often the roots come from being criticized or compared to others in childhood. Your sister's the clever one, you're good at sports. Or don't worry about ballet, you're not graceful. John doesn't like sports, he prefers to read on his own in the corner. As children, we internalize these observations about our character or ability, and we feel they define who we are. It means we are stuck at a point of our development path years ago, and now we need to move past that point. So once we understand what our triggers are and what we're saying to ourselves, we can start to challenge these negative thoughts. I'm also clever, but not at the subjects that my sister was. I'm good at problem solving, but she is good at writing essays. This is quite a long process, and obviously not an overnight fix. And I would say this is something that a life coach could help you with. Understanding your triggers is a great starting point to move forward from and to move away from those entrenched thoughts. I thought it might be interesting to see whether this has sparked anyone to think of a root cause for their imposter feelings. If you think of anything, then do pop it into the chat box so we can see what comes up. But if it's too personal, then really don't worry. No one else can see it anyway, but only share if you're comfortable to do so.
Yes. I hated team sports at school, dreaded PE lessons. Now I always feel that I can't do any kind of sport, so don't try anything new. That's interesting because it's not work related, but still one of those triggers, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that one.
and actually someone saying your sibling comment resonated. I am a younger sibling, always felt I would never do as well as my older sister and could never catch up. Yeah, very, very typical feelings. Okay, let's move on. So what we want to know is what we can actually do to overcome imposter feelings. So
we've got here a few practical tips for you to take away with you. So what steps can you take now to help you overcome feelings of imposter syndrome and give you the confidence to find the job that you really want? So tip number 1, you are not alone. Everyone has felt like an imposter at some time. Before you do anything for the first time, you don't have the experience yet or the evidence that you can do it. So there's always that nagging worry that you can't. So discuss your worries with others. You are certainly not alone in these feelings. Own the feelings. It's not always a bad thing to doubt yourself. It makes you try harder, and when the result is positive, it can feel even better. Self-doubt can also give you humility, as I said, and make you more relatable. No one likes someone who's overconfident. Ask others, people you admire or respect, whether they have ever felt like this before. How did they overcome these feelings? Tip number 2, have a think about times in your life when things didn't go as planned and you thought you had failed. Try and work out why these things happened. Was it just down to you, or were there circumstances out of your control? Maybe you applied for a part-time job, and during the interview process, they decided they would prefer it to be full-time after all. Well, this did actually happen to me, and I was devastated for quite a long time. I then found out that the person who got the job was put in an impossible position and was set up to fail. She left within 6 months, and the boss's husband took over. Make of that what you will. So think about what you can learn from this apparent failure. I learned with that job that often things are not as they seem, and I was never going to get that job. So it wasn't personal at all. Number 3, have a look at people who you believe are better than you in some way, and ask yourself, or maybe even ask them, how they got to where they are today. What was it that they did that is so different to what you're doing? Is there anything more that you could do or learn or research in order to reach the level they're at? In this instance, use comparison to your advantage. And this is one of my favorites and something I do very regularly. Listen to other people's stories on podcasts. So accessible now. One I love is How to Fail by Elizabeth Day. It's incredible how many celebrities were not always confident. And these stories are often inspirational and surprising. I was actually recently at a live recording of a podcast where Elizabeth Day was interviewing Craig David. It was an hour-long interview, and I couldn't count how many times they both mentioned having imposter feelings. It was extraordinary, really. So ask yourself, how did they get to where they are? And what could you do to achieve what you're dreaming of? So number 5, list your own accomplishments in your life, your achievements, and believe me, there will be many. Look at your transferable skills. If you're at home with the kids now, do you have to organize their lives? Do you love planning? Do you love meeting new people? Are you able to multitask? Do you love decorating, updating your home? Are you an amazing cook? Are you doing voluntary work? Think about how these skills can be transferred to the job that you would like. Number 6, create a CV for yourself, a personal CV, not for your employer. This is something I've got my client, the English teacher, Sally, to do, and it really helped her. Write down everything you've achieved in your life, your qualifications and courses you've attended, any awards you've received, sporting achievements, your children, jobs you've had, or just things you're proud of. For example, you might have recently decorated your house on a tight budget. Put it up on the wall, and every time you doubt yourself, look at it. Another thing is to write yourself an elevator pitch, which is a 1-minute speech about yourself, your achievements, and what you are hoping to do. It's something we use in networking a lot, but it can be really useful for everyday life. You just never know when you might bump into someone who has a job opportunity. You just don't want to freeze in the moment. You want to be ready to sell yourself and your skills at any moment. If you don't know how to structure one, I'll put an example in the notes that we're going to send out. Number 8, positive thinking. Now, some of you might be thinking, I'm not sure I believe in such nonsense. It's a bit woo-woo for me. But truly, manifestations and affirmations can be transformational. They work to program your mind and help you to believe that you have already achieved your goal and that you already have that job. They work by, you write it down, where you're going to be in the future. So as an example, I am Joanna Smith and I have a great job as I work in a film studio part-time and still have plenty of time to spend with my children. Say it out loud. Write the affirmation on post-it prompts, put them up around the house. This will help to build conscious awareness of what you really want. Think about what has changed in your life since you gave up work or started your current job. Are you the same person? Look at what your values are now. Have they changed? If you're not sure how to do this, something that a life coach can help you with. Reconnect with your professional self. You might just be out of practice. Remind yourself of what you used to do in your job. Think about your qualifications, training, and your many achievements. What do you want or need from this new job or business? What have you done since leaving the job? Have you moved country, had a baby or two? Have you been traveling? Reframe your time outside work as a positive, not negative. Speak to your friends and family. Ask them to describe you. What do they see as your skills and strengths? It might surprise you. This is all feedback and possibly the evidence you're looking for. And this feedback, hopefully positive, should help you challenge your negative thoughts and the feelings that you can't do it, that you're not qualified for the job, or that you don't, or that you deserve to move on. Note down what they say and add them to that personal CV. Number 11, try not to procrastinate too much. It can be easy to spend time doing additional training, updating your skills, and thinking that once you've learned this or done something or other, you'll be finally ready to apply for that job or change jobs. Being busy always feels really good, but you need to be busy moving forward. So if you're going to take a course, do it at the same time as updating your CV. Applying for that job or going to interviews. One of the easiest ways to build in some accountability is to set yourself a deadline. If you do nothing else, this should spur you into action. Nearly there. Failure is a learning experience. So if you do experience failure, and it's likely you will at some stage during your job search, look at it as a learning experience. Always get feedback if you can. It's not always that easy, but if you can, find out what it was that made them choose someone else. Remember, they didn't reject you. They just chose someone who was a better fit for the job. Armed with that feedback, you will do better next time. Success comes from failure. And also remember that life experience accounts for a lot nowadays. This is another one of my favorite tips, and one that's really worked well for me. Get a mentor or mentor someone else, even better. Mentoring someone else might seem tough when you feel underqualified, but this is so often an unfounded fear. By explaining something to someone who knows less than you, you will be reminded how much you have learned over the years. And if you don't want to be a mentor or find that hard initially, volunteer to talk to local students about what you have achieved since leaving school or university. Once they start asking you questions that you can actually answer with confidence, and you will be able to because it's about you, you will feel so much better. You will have the evidence that you are qualified and that you are worthy. Finally, don't confuse being an amateur with being an imposter. When you start something new, whatever it might be, you are allowed to not know what you're doing. And this is the time that we often feel uncomfortable. The main difference between imposters and non-imposters, so people without imposter feelings and thoughts, is that when an imposter doesn't know something, they feel that they should know it. In the same situation, non-imposters will feel that they don't need to know that thing. They feel they have time to learn and don't have the same expectations of themselves. It's all about controlling your response to the situation and allowing yourself to be an amateur, to be starting something new. Everyone has to start somewhere. The job is always new when you first start, and you're allowed to have time to learn. Remember, we're all unique and have a unique package of skills and talents because we are all different. Embrace it and be kind to yourself and give yourself permission to not know everything. So in conclusion, remember, imposter syndrome is completely normal and can work in your favor occasionally. You're not alone, just talk to people around you and you will see that they also feel the same way. Even though it's a very strong feeling, really try not to give into it. Acknowledge the feelings you're having and use them to move you forward. And hopefully some of the tips I've given you will help. And that's it for me. So hope that was okay. Anyone got questions?
Thanks, Sema. That was excellent. There's lots and lots of food for thought there. I love the thing about talking to people, because I think usually as soon as you open up and say how you're feeling, then actually people equally open up too. So I think it's really, really a good tip. There's lots of questions coming in. So let me just throw some at you, if that's okay. Yeah. So someone's saying, is there other times outside of the workplace that you might feel imposter syndrome? And is there any advice for that?
I think you can feel it at any stage of your life, really. I think one of the things we didn't talk about is that for imposter syndrome to be present, it's normally, there are normally sort of three conditions. When you feel that you're on show, that you're doing something, people are watching you, or if you do something completely new, and also when you feel that you're in the minority doing something, like you're the only one doing it. And so when you get all those three conditions together, people often feel that they feel really uneasy. So it can be at any stage of your life, doing anything. Becoming a new parent could be one, when you have no idea what to deal with this baby, because it's completely new. Your parents are watching you and say, oh, what are you doing? So yes, at any stage.
Cool. Okay. I've had a couple of, there's quite a lot of people saying, how do you go about finding a mentor? Is there organisations that you could recommend? Some tips on how to go about it, really?
So mentoring, yes, there are. I don't actually know off the top of my head any organisation, but I could find out. But it really depends. A mentor would have to be in the area that you're trying to go into. So if you want to become a teacher, it's best to go and find someone who is a teacher who can mentor you. There are mentoring organisations, but when I meant a mentor, I meant more somebody who's kind of doing what you want to be doing, who can guide you, so guiding and support, really.
Sure.
Yeah.
So sometimes that might be someone in the workplace that you're working with, maybe in a different department or more senior team. But yeah, equally, if you go online, I think sometimes you can even get that sort of conversation going if you want to join, say, an HR role. If you go and join an HR group, then actually you could probably find someone that way.
Or even Facebook groups and things.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. I think this one's quite an interesting one. I run a small sales team. I feel quite insecure about the regular meeting we have. And I have to lead meetings with the client. Should I share these feelings with my team?
That's quite a hard one. Obviously, I talked about showing humility and relatability, and absolutely. But I think when your team is looking to you as a leader, I don't think that's a good moment to tell them I feel scared as well. I think it's probably best to fake it until you make it. If you're feeling scared, just get on with it. And then maybe you could tell at the end, maybe have a conversation, say, how did you feel that meeting went? I was a little bit nervous at the beginning, but how did you feel it went? But I think to say something before would be, they might lose confidence in you.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Okay. Slightly off brief, but this question is, you talked about the root cause of feelings. As a parent, how do you think we can help our children to not have those root cause, so that they don't have imposter syndrome when they grow up?
One of the things, I'm not sure how to answer this, so as parents, as children, we tend to think that our parents know everything and that everything they do is right, and we can't imagine ever being like the parents. So I think one of the ways maybe you can do it is to kind of intentionally show your children your mistakes. So show them that we are also human and infallible and make mistakes, and maybe when they're doing their homework, not know the answer to the times table or whatever it is that you're doing, and then show them that you can get things wrong and they can correct you and say, oh no, of course 2 times 2 isn't 10, mummy, or something like that, so they feel that that gap isn't as big, because you can never close that gap, really. You'll always be older until we're decrepit. But I think that's probably one of the ways you can do it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Really good advice. I've got another one here. I'm just checking the time. Someone's saying, thank you, really helpful presentation. When looking for a job, how can I stop talking myself out of applying for a role if I don't meet 100% of the criteria? I'm terrible for doing this.
Okay, so one of the things you have to always remember, and I'm sure as a recruitment agent you'll say, people put all those things on as the requirements, as they know that nobody's going to have every single one of them. It's a guideline. And also when you apply for a job, if you have a few of those things, it's very important that in your cover letter you point out the things that you do have, your great qualities. And if you get to the next stage and you can convince them, it's often about personality anyway. And you have to remember that list of things that you need, no one's looking for 100% of them. If you feel, yeah, is that right?
It's really, I mean, it's a really interesting, there's some research and it's a female thing. So females won't apply for a job unless every box is ticked.
Yeah.
Men will apply for a job if they've got 25%. Yes. And it's just so strange.
Yeah,
and part of that is just the confidence, as you say, it's a guide.
It's a guide.
And often employers will put everything and the kitchen sink into a job description just because they're thinking, well, hopefully someone will have about 75% of this, 80% of it. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, if you think you can do it and you think that you have the qualifications or not even the qualifications, that you can do that job, apply. You lose some time, obviously, because it takes time to apply. But if you don't apply, you'll never know. You will miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really nice saying, actually. Yeah. Okay, I've got so many here. We will have to definitely do a follow-up. I mean, classic here. Worried I'm not as good as my new employer thinks I am. That is absolutely classic, isn't it?
Yeah. And how do you know what he thinks? Really, it's what you're thinking. So it's your thoughts that you're trying to make reality, and your thoughts are not reality. It's what you do with those thoughts when you bring them out. You need to bring out that thought and think, I'm being, no, he doesn't know.
And often I think bosses, it's because it's about what you set your own standards as. If you're setting your standards so high, you're never going to achieve them. No. And you're right, you don't know what your boss is thinking. No. I'm being gradually chipped away at my confidence in my current job, looking elsewhere. I went for an interview, didn't get it. When asking for feedback, I was told I didn't sell myself. How can I get the confidence back to sell myself?
That's a really hard one, especially when you've had some hard knocks. It's really taking a step back and reminding yourself of all the things that you are good at, because people do say unkind things and make you feel bad about yourself, but you have to remember that there are some really great things about yourself about you as well, and you have to remind yourself of those and take a deep breath.
And it's that personal CV thing again, Sema, isn't it, that you mentioned? If you've got that and you know all your previous achievements, and often I say to candidates, think about how it felt. When you were successful before, or you felt successful, how did it actually feel? And try and conjure that up and bottle it. And if you can do that, I think that takes you into a much better place for selling yourself. And then if you've got your elevator pitch, as you quite rightly said, all sewn up. Yeah,
exactly. And just talk about it. Don't keep it to yourself. Talk to someone that you trust, and talk it through, and just don't stew in it. That's the thing, because people can say very unkind things.
Yeah.
You don't realize the effect that it has on people. Words are so hurtful.
Absolutely. Okay, we're out of time, and there is quite a lot more questions. So I think what we'll do, it shows that everybody's really been engaged. So that's fantastic. What we'll do is we'll pull all the questions together, and we can just issue a quick FAQs along with the handout tomorrow. So I'd just like to say thank you to you, Sema. Fantastic. Thank you for your time. And thank you everybody for joining us. And we hope to see you on another 10 to 2 webinar very soon.
Lovely. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.